Hey guys, it's Sam, and I am back to give you the wide receiver cornerback matchups that I like the best all season long. Starting here with week 2. Let's jump right into it and talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, who last week let Phillip Rivers throw for 424 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think that it's very possible Ben Roethlisberger has a similar week this week. None of the corners in Kansas City graded out higher than a 68.3 according to Pro Football Focus. And Orlando Scandrick, the old man Scandrick, was burned twice for touchdowns. Steven Nelson gave up 7 catches for 100 yards. And now he's going to have his hands full with Antonio Brown, who lines up on the same side about 50% of the time. Also, don't forget about the Chargers running backs who totaled 190 yards last week. I think this could be another big week for James Conner. Overall, I love Big Ben as a quarterback. Quarterback 1. I think he could be the best quarterback in fantasy this week. Obviously, Antonio Brown, JuJu Smith-Schuster. You want to start all your Steelers wide receivers. James Conner. It's going to be a huge week for the Steelers. The Chiefs have no defense. Next, a much more exciting matchup on the defensive side is Tom Brady versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tom Brady always seems like he can get stuff done. He always finds a way, and the way this week might be going to Gronk, because you never want to throw at Jalen Ramsey and A.J. Bouye. Last week, Eli Manning went at Jalen Ramsey a lot, and actually Odell Beckham Jr. burned him for five catches on 7 of his targets for 75 yards. But I think after facing Odell Beckham Jr. in week 1, Jalen Ramsey is not going to find any of the Patriots receivers that difficult. Tom Brady has never really been this thin, this shallow at wide receiver, so I think he's going to have to rely on Gronk a lot. The Jaguars actually gave up the 8th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers last year, but they gave up the 2nd most fantasy points to tight ends. So I think it's going to be a lot of Brady to Gronk. I know people were very excited about Chris Hogan going into the season. He didn't have a good week last week, and it's not likely he'll have a good week this week. So I would stay away from Patriots receivers, even though Tom Brady gets things done. I think he's going to throw a lot to running backs and to Gronk. Next, we have Packers and Vikings. Now, this could be a very interesting matchup. First of all, depending on whether or not Aaron Rodgers plays. If he does play, I think it's going to be a great defense against a great offense. Last week, Randall Cobb, Geronimo Allison, and Devontae Adams all found the end zone. Aaron Rodgers played the second half on a broken leg, like Greg Jennings back in Madden 2000, whenever the hell that was. But if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play, you can't start any of these wide receivers. None of them are going to be good against the Vikings defense unless Aaron Rodgers is in there. Devontae Adams will likely get a handful of Xavier Rhodes, and you don't really want to trust that, but Devontae Adams is more of a must start. The one weakness, kind of based on last week's games in the Vikings defense, was Trae Waynes, who got a 40.7 game grade from Pro Football Focus last week against the 49ers. Now Geronimo Allison is set to line up against Trae Waynes, so he might see some targets. He might see some clear space around him that Aaron Rodgers will likely find if he's open. But if Rodgers is out, again, don't trust any of those receivers against the Vikings secondary. It's not what you want. You only want that if Rodgers is there. Now, the last game I want to talk about is, and the last really unit I want to talk about is the Bucs wide receivers. Ryan Fitzpatrick went nuts last week against a Saints defense that was actually pretty good last year, but Ryan Fitzpatrick absolutely torched him. Every one of his receivers played well. Deshaun Jackson went nuts. Now, Deshaun Jackson might be injured, which could be a huge step up for Chris Godwin. But Mike Evans, I was kind of low on him, to be honest, going into drafts because of how many receivers and tight ends and everything they have over there. But it looks like Mike Evans is, at least based on 1 week, is the guy, and they're going to look for him a lot. And it looks like the Bucs are going to be throwing the ball a ton. Now, they're playing the Eagles this week, and against the Eagles last week, the only player that could really do anything was Julio Jones. Julio Jones actually got 76 yards on Jalen Mills and Ronald Darby. But aside from Julio Jones, the Falcons only put up 82 receiving yards outside of Julio Jones' 169-yard outburst. So the Bucs have a lot to throw at you with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, the pair of tight ends they have with Cameron Brayton, O.J. Howard. Jackson, we're not sure if he's going to play or not. But what the Eagles did last week was they basically took everyone. The Eagles have an incredible defense. They basically took everyone out of the game except for Julio Jones. And Julio Jones, again, burned them for 169 yards, but nobody else was able to do anything. Their running game didn't get started. They couldn't find any other receivers. There was no tight end play. It was just not good. So we could see a similar occurrence this week with Mike Evans. Could be that Mike Evans has a big week and they just let the Bucs do everything they want to Mike Evans, but stop them everywhere else. So those are the 4 games I really want to watch. The 4 games I'm most excited about in terms of wide receiver cornerback matchups.